Hi, welcome to another episode of No Power Panel. I'm Noam.
And I'm Isaac.
All right, and Isaac, you have some news that you're wanting to share with the audience.
I just wanted to first thank everyone who's listened or watched. I didn't really know if anyone would listen or watch when we started this, so that's nice. But I just wanted to let people know that going forward, I'm going to be taking a step back from the podcast for personal reasons, so I won't be appearing on every episode like I have been. But I trust it's in good hands with Noam. So and he's got a plan for going forward. But I won't be here every week. I don't know exactly what it's going to look like going forward, but I'm sure Noam will fill you in on that.
Absolutely. So thank you, Isaac, so much. Just on a personal level, Isaac and I are cousins. We've said that before. Getting to talk to you every week about stuff that we both care a lot about and about the world has been really, really nice. And I appreciate it. I appreciate that you were crazy enough to go on the start of this journey with me when I messaged you one day suggesting it. So thank you very much. You absolutely will continue to be a part of the legacy of No Power Panel. You are one of the original hosts, and we are also appreciative of that. And absolutely, the spot is always open for you to come back anytime that your circumstances allow and that you feel like you have something that you want to say. That being said, Isaac shared this news with me a week ago, and so I've had some time to think things through. And as you can imagine, the first couple of days were a little just, oh my God, can it continue? But I think we now have a really kind of solid, good plan as to what episodes are going to look like going forward. How it is going to work is portions I will continue to do by myself, and portions we will have other people come on. At this time, I have decided against trying to find another permanent co-host. I think that Isaac and I developed a chemistry on mic that was good and that worked, and that would be difficult to immediately replicate fully with someone else. And so how we're going to work this is the episodes are going to be kind of split going forwards. We'll have a rotating lineup of guest co-hosts that come in. There will be someone here, I'm hoping, every single week with me. It won't always be the same person. I already have, I think, the next 4 or 5 weeks of people ready to go. Some people are waiting to find out exactly which date they're going, but I promise if you're one of those listeners, one of those people, that news is on the way, and I appreciate you agreeing to come on. How things are going to work, because it's going to be a rotating lineup, and I don't want to be asking everybody, each person every week to pay attention to all of the news that there is to talk about, is I am going to ask guests on to do kind of a deep dive into one or two stories where we can go in a little bit more depth. As our listeners are aware, sometimes is the habit around here. So we're going to allot the time for that properly. Now, we're going to spend about half an hour every episode really going into deep on one or two stories, depending on the meat of them. And that will be preceded in every episode with about 5 to 10 minutes of me kind of running through a highlight reel of some of the other big stories. And then, of course, we will continue to end every episode with winners and losers of the week. That is something that every week the guest will join me for. So we'll still get 2 winners and 2 losers, and we'll still get that little bit of back and forth. So going forward, that is how things are going to look. We're going to wrap up this moment now. I will be joined in just a moment by our guest for this week, who is Ji Won Jung. She is a former NDP candidate and NDP staffer, and is now helping to lead the Reclaim the NDP movement. She will be our guest for this week. We'll be doing a kind of deep dive on the circumstances with the NDP in the aftermath of our interview last week with Eve Engler. If you haven't checked that out, then go and watch that full 45-minute interview that Isaac and I did together. So once again, thank you so much. I hope that you continue to listen. And thank you so much, Isaac. This has been a real pleasure. And I hope that we will see you back here one day.
Thank you. And if nothing else, for these last 6 months, getting to talk to you every week, it's been worth it. So I appreciate everything else on top of that. Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks, Isaac. And I'll be right back with Ji. Have a good day.
No suits, no script, just heat on the mic. Noam's in the chair, calling out the hype with guest co-hosts, keeping it raw. Politics, power, no holds barred. It's no power panel, we say it loud. Crack through the headlines, cut through the crowd, laugh through the chaos, burn through the spin. If you're not angry, are you even tuned in? This is the No Power Panel. Let's begin.
Welcome back to No Power Panel, and of course now Isaac is leaving us, and I'm joined by our guest for this week, who is Ji Won, a former NDP candidate in this last 2025 federal election, and she's now an organizer and spokesperson with Reclaim Canada's NDP. Thanks for joining me, Ji Won.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Noam, right?
Yes, Noam. Yeah, absolutely. No, it's great to have you. We're wanting to get into this conversation in terms of what's going on with the NDP. Full disclosure, I've been a member of the NDP in the past. I was at one time a riding EDA president, and it's now been, I think, my membership lapsed in 2018. And I haven't had it since. So it's been a little while, but I do have that little bit of background with the party. And in getting this podcast going, really the goal of Isaac and I was to help further the conversation in terms of Canada's left in politics and where we go from here. So we want to talk about what's happening in the NDP. We, of course, were joined last week by Eve Engler, who is a candidate in the leadership race, being backed by the Socialist Caucus. We are extending invitations to other leadership candidates. We're going to be talking to Green Party people. We're going to be talking to left-wing Liberal folks. The goal is to kind of try and create a space for the progressive side of politics to speak and to try to come together. So that's just for you, a little bit of the background of the show. You ran, I believe, in Etobicoke, right?
Yeah, Etobicoke Center.
Etobicoke Center. And what was that experience like? I know that there's some things that you can't go into, but just in kind of general for our audience who doesn't have the experience of running for office.
Yeah, no worries.
No
worries. So I was actually a staff member. I was an employee of the party. starting in March, like right before the writ dropped, right after Mark Carney had kind of been announced as the new prime minister, and for the time being, I got hired and I was in Ottawa. I was working on candidate products as a graphic designer. That was kind of my first purview. I showed up, I ended up kind of helping out with a lot of different things, including candidate search. And during that, I was asked to be a candidate because we were nearing the candidate deadline and no one had stepped up to run in Etobicoke Centre. And so
Sure.
I'm sure a lot of people have heard about the concept of like these paper candidates or parachuted candidates that are kind of centrally appointed. I guess you could say that's how I started out as one. But I think what I really took away from that is that you can really own being a candidate, and it's like you can kind of do as much or as little as you are ready to do. So I kind of went into it not being aware of any funding. I did end up receiving some funding for my campaign through my EDA and through the Victory Fund, which is for equity deserving or equity seeking group candidates. But other than that, I didn't really plan to run, right? So I had literally less than a month to do my campaign before election day. And so I ended up running a pretty minimal campaign. And also because I knew that my riding at Etobicoke Centre is a pretty close race between the Liberals and Conservatives. It used to be a historically conservative riding. It's been Liberal for the past few terms. And I appreciate the fact that, I didn't want to split the vote to a degree that the Liberal candidate would lose and it'd go back to the Conservatives. But at the same time, the Liberal MP there who just got reelected, Yvonne Baker, is, in my opinion, a pretty right-wing Liberal. He thinks that the Liberal Party is too progressive and that it's too leftist. So in my view, I just felt it's kind of like choosing between two conservatives. So I still ran and I did what I could to talk to my constituents. But my focus was on actually helping out in a neighbor riding in Tayaco and Parkdale High Park, because it was the riding where we had the best NDP chances of winning a seat. It was Butila Carpoche, who used to be a member of provincial parliament in Ontario, running, and I really believed in her, and I was hoping that she would win that seat to represent Western Toronto as a whole, including Etobicoke. So I was really strategic in making sure that I was maintaining enough of a presence in Etobicoke so that people in Etobicoke knew that the NDP existed and that they could come to me if they had questions, but also making sure that I'm directing resources to what makes the most sense, which at the time was supporting a neighbor riding that had better chances. Unfortunately, Butila did not win that seat, but we came close to it. I think it was the only second place riding that the NDP got in Toronto. So, not a wasted effort for sure.
No, definitely. And hopefully something to build on for next time. Because definitely Toronto should be an area where we see growth for the NDP and progressive campaigns. One would hope and think, I believe. Okay, so you did that, and then you came somehow to the conclusion that things weren't working in the NDP. Did that kind of start to settle for you before being a candidate when you were at head office and kind of watching what happened there? Or was that through the process of actually campaigning that some of these thoughts started to occur to you?
Yeah, I mean, to be frank with you, this is my first year being officially associated with the NDP. I only became an NDP member this year, 2025. To be fair, I'm on the younger side. I only graduated university last year, but also my background is pretty nonpartisan. I've always kind of been a bit more of a disillusioned type, oh, like electoral politics isn't going to save us. And I would spend most of my time since I was a kid, like just volunteering with mutual aid groups, food banks, soup kitchens, things like that. So that's kind of been my background as like kind of a pragmatic type of person when it comes to helping others. I will say in the past session of Parliament, when I saw that the NDP caucus was able to get the wins of dental care and pharmacare, it kind of changed my mind. It inspired me to consider getting into electoral politics. It re-illusioned me, I guess. And so when I decided to start helping out with the NDP and really learning about the party and its history and its current status, it was only earlier at the beginning of this year, going into the Ontario provincial election, where I was a volunteer on Alexa Gilmore's campaign in Parkdale High Park. And so going into being hired to the head office, which I just like cold applied to, and that's just my professional background is in like design and marketing. So I got hired, and I will say it was an interesting change of pace for me because my background is like purely private sector. My family is like very, very working class, but specifically working class and private sector, right? So we've never had any real advantage of like unions or like big strength in workers' rights. We're a Korean immigrant family, and we've always had private employers who haven't been the greatest at times. So that was my background: is these very hardcore corporate environments where you don't really know your bosses, and they just kind of expect you to put out as much output as possible. So going into partisan work, which is, I would say, adjacent to public because it's not actually public service, like a government job, but still has some of those union protections, especially being the New Democratic Party, which has those labor roots with the Labor Congress, was interesting. I felt like the work environment was great, and I met a lot of really amazing people. But at the same time, I noticed that, for example, just some work was taking longer than I would have originally expected if it was the same project in a private sector environment. I noticed that maybe resources were being used a little bit more liberally than like conservatively, ignoring the political ties of those terms, and those things. So those things were probably the first like little, not even red flags, like orange flags to me, that I was like, okay, like let me think about this and like kind of try to take a step back and review this is from like an organizational standpoint. And I've always been like a politically conscious person, and so I knew a lot of people, especially in my circles, those who consider themselves more leftist and more activist types, weren't a big fan of the NDP at this point. They were like, oh, the NDP is just another establishment party, is what a lot of people were saying. It's just another version of the Liberal Party, so I'm not going to vote in the election, or I'm going to vote for the Communist Party or the Green Party or something, right? That's what was coming up in my friend groups. And so I recognize that versus what the messaging that the NDP were trying to do. My managers at the office were trying to reach these working class voters and really show that the party has done good work. And so what issue I found, and I'm trying to address through Reclaim Canada's NDP, is not necessarily like trying to change the NDP as a whole. I think there are a lot of really, really great parts. Our specific mission is to make the NDP a viable political option for the average Canadian, just based on how that election went. So to answer your question, I'd say leading up to the election night, I was a little skeptical, but I was just kind of like, let's see how it turns out. And then when we got the election results where we lost, what was it, more than 10 seats, we went from 24 to 7 seats.
24 to 7, yeah.
Wait, is that... I'm not doing the math correctly.
No,
but...
it's all good. 18, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of seats. And
a lot of seats.
We lost official party status, which meant a lot of amazing people that I met working with the party who were parliamentary staff lost their jobs that they've been working for 10, 20 years. And so it was a really devastating loss for me on an electoral and personal level. And so then after that, I'd say like through May and June, I was doing a lot of reflection about how the election went, and also like my own ideas and my own experiences, as well as reaching out to people with more experiences and kind of trying to piece the whole picture together. And so that's when I met former MPs like Matthew Green and Rachel Blaney, who kind of confirmed that the issues I was seeing wasn't just because like I'm new, like they've been there and they agree that they're there. And also my co-organizer Keith was also a staff member who's worked for the party for a bit longer than I have. So we all kind of like were on the same page. So then we were like, okay, something's wrong. We got 6% of votes that election. That's not okay. Something has to be done about it. And then we just kind of started brainstorming on what to do. And what we thought of is this idea of just this overall movement of reclaiming the party for the working class, making it more accessible and more in touch with the grassroots of the party.
That makes a lot of sense. I'll just share with you, since you kind of went into that, and it might be helpful for the listeners. I experienced something similar in the aftermath of the 2015 campaign. I got very involved in the party in 2010, and worked very, very hard at the local level in Waterloo Region for 5 years in the lead up into 2011. We got the result in 2011. That was, that night was one of the best nights of my life. And then working for the next 4 years in the lead up to 2015 and what happened there. I was close with some of the MPs that lost their seats in that route. And I watched a kind of similar thing happen with the party, especially gearing into ousting Tom Mulcair, which I'll admit I was involved in that movement to get rid of him. Not quite sure how well that turned out in the long run for the party. But what we then saw was, and this is kind of where I'm building to with this, is the leadership race that followed that election immediately saw some of the biggest names who were being talked about as potential next leaders bow out, right? People like Nathan Cullen and Megan Leslie and a number of the folks who at the time were the big names in the party. And so then we ended up with and I'll apologize to the candidates in this race for saying this, but it almost felt like a B tier level leadership stage. And then emerging from that, it sounds like I stopped being involved in the party. It sounds like from what you're saying, and both from the people who were involved at that point and what you experienced years later, that a lot of those trends didn't shift with the result of that leadership race. It just kind of continued. So as the party moves into this next leadership race, what do you see as Reclaim NDP's role at the same time as because it would be one thing if the party had a leader, had someone that you could kind of be putting this pressure around. But that is very open right now, right? Don Davies is doing the job on a parliamentary side, and but there isn't that kind of one national person that you can kind of create a pressure campaign towards. Are you looking at your job right now to be more influencing the direction of the leadership race? Or is it more about just pure organizational, creating that backbone for the organization of the party so that whoever emerges, there's something there for them to take on?
I'd say kind of both in different ways. One, I will say I did meet with Don earlier this week, I think. Yeah, it's a bit of a blur of a week, but yeah,
Sure.
Don's great. He's doing a lot of hard work, and honestly, all the current caucus members and former MPs have been mostly pretty receptive to being in communication with us, which is always an honor. I would maybe say that in terms of a pressure point that we're looking at and what we've been speaking about as Reclaim isn't really towards the caucus or even Don, because Don's an interim leader and, like you said, kind of focusing on the parliamentary pieces. It's more so the upper management of the party at a staff level.
Okay.
So the national director, Lucy Watson, the campaign director of the recent federal election, who was Jennifer Howard, who's since technically left her position, but hasn't really taken much public accountability for her decisions. Same with Jagmeet, right? He was the leader at the time, and he made a lot of calls that led to those abysmal election outcomes. And yes, he resigned, and of course he has every right to take a break because he was working nonstop for a decade. But at the same time, there wasn't really that necessary a bit of a public ego death of okay, we messed up, things happened, these were the people that made those decisions, and now they're leaving, so we can kind of move forward. That transition hasn't happened. from Jagmeet, from Jennifer, from Lucy. Lucy's still the national director of the party. Anne McGrath, who was the national director of the party for many years, who was the secretary to the leader during the election, and I believe didn't make the best calls in certain situations and affected our electoral outcome, has since lost her job with the party, and now she has joined a private political consulting firm led by Mark Carney's campaign director. So there's a lot of these pieces where I'm like, what is going on? Like, why is there no
Yeah.
accountability at the top, especially on the staff level? Because when you talk to the average Canadian, they know Jagmeet's name, but they don't know Lucy or Anne or Jennifer, right? Or Jesse Calvert, who's the deputy national director. A lot of people don't know him. And the other table officers who, if you look up like NDP federal executive, I think all their names come up. But yeah, these are people who, some of them are elected and some of them are volunteers. For example, Mary Shortall, who's the president of the party, she's in a fully volunteer position. And these federal council positions are all just elected during convention and all volunteer based. But folks like Lucy Watson and Jesse Calvert, who are employed by the party, that take a salary from the party, I think they definitely, especially given how this recent election went, are the people we're applying that pressure on, because we're like, hey, this is literally your job, and we are kind of technically your employers because we are the members of the NDP, and you answer to the party who we form. It's a membership-driven party, right, by nature and by its tradition. And so why are you not responding to your employer, like to the people you're supposed to answer to, the people you claim to represent and advocate for and do your work for, especially when you didn't make the best outcomes? Because if you're in a normal job and you mess up, you go to your boss and you say, hi, hey, I'm sorry, like I messed up. This is how I messed up and how I'm going to improve. But they haven't done that with the party's base, despite that being the literal nature of their job. And so that's kind of the pressure point we're going for, is we're negotiating with the party's upper management, these staff members, saying like, hey, you got to take accountability. Going to the leadership race, we had a bit of a back and forth because the table officers were really pushing and lobbying for a short leadership race because they wanted to put in just a party leader so that they could fundraise aggressively as soon as they have a new leader in place, which, I disagreed with, everyone at Reclaim disagreed with. We wanted a longer race so that we could find a new voice and new direction of the party. And so that's why we launched our donation redirection campaign at the time, which we've gotten a bit of flack for in the media, but I think it came at the appropriate time where we were calling on internal democracy of the party and improving the backbone at the local level through riding associations, funding them better, given that the outcome of the election, as mentioned in our CBC article, is so financially terrible for the party and for the local EDAs, because less than, I think, 50 NDP EDAs are getting the rebate, and even those rebates are all going to the central party. So right now, like, all the NDP EDAs are starting from zero, quite literally, which is, I think, quite unfair given how much work went into a lot of things and how much of the negative outcomes were issues made at the top. And so based on those things, we called for decentralization, we called for redirection of funds. And by doing that, we were able to apply pressure. We made a lot of people excited to get involved with NDP again that had kind of given up before. And through that, we were able to lobby successfully the 7-month leadership race. So I would say we're not advocating for any specific leadership candidate. We have committed to staying neutral on the leadership race itself. But we believe that our role is keeping a healthy scrutiny on who's running the race, which is Lucy Watson and the table officers. She's on the team of 3 people, which 2 out of 3 are table officers, and only 2 out of 3 need to agree to disqualify or accept a leadership candidate, for example. So there is very much the chance that if we're not paying attention and we're not keeping Lucy on her toes, that she might disqualify people that she doesn't want to run the party. She might disqualify people she thinks might be a threat to her position and her job. And so it's those things where we have to keep an eye on her and on the race, and at the same time make it just competitive and exciting, because a lot of people are upset about the $100,000 entry fee for the race, which was
that was going to be my next question.
which was a win.
Yeah.
They were originally pushing for 150,000, and we really pushed back on it hard, with collaboration with a lot of other grassroots parts of the party. And also it is in 4 installments, which is, I think, also a win. Like, I think it was originally supposed to be in like 2 or 3 installments, but we got it divvied up a bit more, so it's a bit more accessible now. So for example, if someone puts in 25,000 to become a leadership candidate, it'll be easier to raise the remaining 75,000 now that they are an official candidate, right? So there's those measures that we were able to kind of push for to make it more accessible. But I think in the end, we just want to make sure that this is an exciting race, that it's a competitive race, because what the people at the top, these upper management folks in the party, want is for us to look at the 100,000 figure and get disappointed and throw our hands up and be like, never mind, like, I don't care. Whoever wants to be the leader of the NDP, do it. And then Lucy Watson gets to keep having her job and running the party that she wants to, and that fills her pockets, right? So I think our hope is to make this as democratic and as membership driven as possible. We're asking people who are upset with the party, it sounds counterintuitive, but to become members of the party now more than ever, so that they can vote, so that they can complain, so that they can be involved with their EDAs and file issues with the way that the party's been run, and push resolutions leading up to convention, and also send delegates to convention to vote on stuff. So I'd say holistically, the leadership race is a really big example of how we need to, as a party, be more democratic, and that's what we're advocating for at Reclaim. And I think the backbone of the party, the local riding associations, is a really powerful tool to do that.
That's really good to hear. As the former EDA official, I definitely have stories that maybe I could tell another time about some wild interference that goes on with the EDAs from upper management of the party. So in terms of springing off from that point about increasing membership and specifically getting people involved in their EDAs in convention, you know, during my time involved, I attended 3 federal NDP conventions. My experience was that there was about 1,800 delegates who were all going to do on 95% of the issues what the party told them to do. And you would have a very few close votes on a very few specific resolutions. And then you had about 50 to 100 members of the Socialist Caucus who were singing a different tune on more like 50% of the issues. So I want to specifically address how you feel, whether you feel like the job that you are trying to do with Reclaim is easier served by just aligning with other left-wing movements and kind of trying to go around the party establishment that is going to be fighting back on some of this stuff, or whether you're trying to work from within the system, how you view that dichotomy, because there's definitely, you know, an angle, like kind of, I would call it the Jeremy Corbyn angle of like before your party.uk, when he was taking over the Labour Party, where he just infused the party during that leadership with like 300,000 people who backed him, and he didn't care what the rest of the party had to say about it. Or do you think that there is an importance in trying to align with the elements of the established party that do have some agreement with you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I will say I totally hear you. Like, Matthew and I were talking about convention and the fact that he's boycott a few of them, even when he was a sitting MP, just given how not really representatively democratic it can be, the way it's set up and the way that sometimes procedures are abused. So I hear you on that, and that's why I've been really looking at how we can approach convention in a more democratic way and in a more accessible way, because it's so expensive to fly across the country for an average person, right? It's difficult. It's inaccessible. I'd say overall, my goal is not to antagonize New Democrats in general or anything. Like, I think there's actually really few people that we are actually, like you said, targeting, like the people I've named, honestly, just like Lucy
Right.
Watson, Jennifer Howard, so on. It's because even central staff right now, the current regional organizers, like I'm friends with them. I work with them at the party, and they're
Right.
great people, and they're doing what they can. They're each taking on, I think, like 70 plus ridings each. So they're a bit slow to respond to EDA presidents, but they're doing their best. And also they're very collaborative with us. Like I've been connecting them with volunteers that have been coming to Reclaim to maybe start EDAs in more dormant ridings or rejuvenate them, things like that. So it's honestly, I think collaboration is really, really important. And that's why whenever people try to accuse Reclaim of being an instance of quote unquote leftist infighting, I can't help but roll my eyes, because like that's not what we're doing. Like we're more united than ever, I find. I think honestly, Canada is in a tough spot outside of the leftist spectrum, right? We're in a really scary time with everything going down in the States, with the Trump administration, and what's going on now that Carney's been elected and that the Conservative Party has won so many more seats, that they're bulldozing through these undemocratic bills like Bill C5 and Bill C2. So it's a time more than ever where I think, out of urgency, leftists, progressives, and New Democrats all need to kind of come together and work towards what will pragmatically and most realistically help the most people as soon as possible. That's where I'm personally motivated, right? Like I'm partially disabled. A lot of my loved ones are disabled, and right now I'm really scared about the direction that our economy and that our country's attitude towards the social safety net is going, because people are getting very scarcity mindset driven, given how the messaging has been at a federal level. And a lot of disabled people are being left behind and they're falling through the cracks, right? A lot of working class people are. People are living paycheck to paycheck and wondering if they'll ever be able to afford a home in this country. And that's not an okay place to be. So I think given those realities of just how things are day to day, when that at the end of the day, we're not here to like fight each other. We're not here to criticize each other. I always say, like, if you really care about something, then you'll criticize it. Like, you're not just gonna nod along to whatever the party wants. We're gonna be thorough and be constructive and be honest with each other. And so, yeah, like I have central staff friends, and if they make bad calls, I'll call them out on it, not from a place of malice, but from respect and from genuine desire to work together to forge a good and fair future for Canadians. So I think there's a balance to the two things you mentioned with working inside and outside. I think a big focus for me is bringing people into this tent that is the NDP, people who might have been disillusioned or burnt by the party, folks like yourself who kind of tried to do things and felt like there wasn't really a place for you to see fruit of your effort. Those are the people I want to bring back, and those are the people I want to reclaim the party for, because reclaiming the party, I think the reason when we went with that name is because it's not about one ideology or one person. It's not about me. It's not about Keith or Matthew or Rachel. It's about how each and one of us as Canadians, as New Democrats, and as leftists need to work together and just make and advocate for our voices to be heard at the table and have a seat in electoral politics.
That's great. That's important, and I think that certainly there's definitely room for all kinds of approaches in terms of bringing the left together. It's very much our goal here is to help be a place where that conversation can start to happen. Do you personally, setting aside the Reclaim, is there somebody in the leadership field that you personally like the look of? Out of all of the potential contenders, I'm gonna put you on the spot like that.
No, I appreciate that. I mean, I will say, just because I am like an official spokesperson with Reclaim, I've decided that I won't be publicly endorsing a candidate, just because
Okay.
my association with Reclaim. I don't think it would be fair to the people who've kind of lended me the platform through their voices. So I can't answer, but maybe we'll come across something down the line. If like I'm not opposed to the fact that like there's a chance that I will later into the year be helping some of the candidates that maybe I align with or something. But in terms of public endorsement, just given like the platform I have and the access I have, I don't think is my place to make.
Absolutely. No, that's totally fair. And then my last question, which you've already kind of addressed before we move into winners and losers, is specifically on the name Reclaim the NDP. And if you think that reclaiming is conducive with changing, or if it is more so just a kind of replacing those top few people, and then things kind of go back to the way that they were.
No, I appreciate the question. I think I think we specifically went with reclaim over something like rebuild or like reform, because I think reclaiming is so meaningful in the sense that like it's a transference of ownership, right? But not just in terms of like replacing the people that are there with different people in the same positions, but changing the nature and the culture of the party such that it's informed by the people that it's supposed to serve. So what I mean by that is we are advocating for less leader-centric politics. Honestly, I think all parties are really capable, and in this recent election definitely saw overemphasis on the leaders of the party, right? Everyone knows Pierre Poilievre, Mark Carney, Elizabeth May, and Jagmeet. They didn't know who their local candidate was. I would be at canvassing in Toronto. I'd have friends canvassing in BC and people telling us they're going to quote unquote vote for Mark Carney. And I'm like, you don't live in Nepean, Ottawa. You can't. So there's all of that, right? And I think especially the NDP being the party of the working class and for the average Canadian, we need to deconstruct that and really be critical of what we're setting out to do and how it makes sense to inform our practices on how we get there. So not just the outcome, because I mean, yeah, it sounds nice to think like, oh, what if everyone really liked Jagmeet and everyone wanted to vote for Jagmeet? So then we ended up getting like majority NDP seats in the House and we had an NDP government. That sounds nice, but also it doesn't really actually follow in logic when you think about the people we're fighting for and the policies we're pushing for, which are so people powered and so dependent on local involvement and engagement at the grassroots level. So my hope is to, of course, I think some people in the party, it's time for them to kind of hand it off to the next generation and also like to the next era of thinking. But at the same time, I think we need to change the culture and just the inherent values that are practiced in the party. Because I mean, I still call myself a New Democrat because I really do align with with what the NDP stands for and what it's accomplished. Like I said, the fact that we have nationalized dental care in this past year is so huge to me. My partner is going to the dentist, I think, literally tomorrow for the first time in 7 years, thanks to the NDP. Wow. So I can't be rude to the accomplishments that this party has accomplished because it's genuinely monumental and it's helping people. So I respect the hell out of that. But at the end of the day, on an organizational, on a professional level, it's not being led by those voices. So my hope is to make the party more equitable, more accessible, so that people like my partner who grew up in the group home system can be part of the party and can have a voice at the table of decision making, and so that things aren't so top heavy, that there's respect for local community knowledge. For example, like instead of all campaign decisions being made at the top, some concessions being made so that maybe like a rural BC regional council or like a territories NDP council makes calls on what policies to push in their region, depending on what they're hearing from their constituents. So I think it's reclaiming in a much bigger sense, as well as in like a literal sense. And yeah, I mean, I could talk about it for ages, but I that's like the shortest I can answer it.
No, that's totally fair. I like the different regions. I can't tell you. I was the president of Kitchener-Conestoga EDA, and I can't tell you the number of. Oh my God, you have Uh, so they, and I can't tell you the number of times I'd call our federal organizer and say, like, can I please say this to the farmers? It is something that the NDP is going to do anyway. It's something that, like, we all believe in. Okay, it's not in the platform, but, like, if I can tell them this, I can probably pick up 10% of the rural vote.
Mhm.
And I'd get back, well, no, because that's not the messaging of the party. And it was stuff like that that really made me just go, well, then this isn't a party that is functional. So I
I
think that
totally agree.
it's important, the work that you guys are doing. We're gonna move into winners and losers of the week. So G1, every week we have to pick a winner of the week and a loser of the week in political news. They can be relevant to what we've been talking about, or they can be completely wild out there things from across the world. Just kind of what comes to you and where you think the week stands. So generally we start with loser of the week. So and we'll each give a loser and we'll each give a winner, and then it's a brief explanation uh, as to why. So I'll go first for loser. And my loser of the week is the Western media elite um, for failing in their coverage of the genocide in Gaza. They have been a loser of the week, I think, for that before from us. But I think this week, especially in the death of uh, of the Al Jazeera team and of Anis and all that he represented for people, that has been made even more clear that they have been completely complicit in the war crimes of Israel. The CBC, the BBC, CNN, NBC, CBS, ABC, Fox News, all of them, from all of the Western media mainstream, have been complicit in allowing this genocide to occur. So they're my loser for the week.
Yeah, I
Who
totally
is
agree with you.
yours?
I agree with you there for sure. I'd say my loser for the week, just kind of bringing it domestically, is Air Canada. Because I don't know if folks
Mhm.
have been keeping up, but Air Canada is facing some strikes right now because they are refusing to pay their flight attendants a fair wage. Currently, Air Canada flight attendants work 35 to 40 hours a month unpaid, just because they only get paid for time in air, even though they obviously work on the planes outside of being in the air. So they're advocating for getting that fair pay, and instead of having proper negotiations with Air Canada, is canceling thousands of flights, affecting hundreds of thousands of customers, and trying to shift the blame on these flight attendants that are purely just asking for a fair labor condition.
I agree with you there. Absolutely. They definitely deserve that. It's completely ridiculous. And good on the flight attendants and the workers for standing up for their rights and for their fair treatment as workers. Okay, we'll move on to winners of the week now. My winner for this week is actually going to stay along the same lines and say that there's an amazing piece of organizing that is now happening. We've seen the Freedom Flotillas going to Gaza and being shut down by Israel. I'm kind of on this theme this week, but I don't care. This is where my head is at. So they have announced now that they're going to do the largest ever Freedom Flotilla sail to Gaza. And I just saw the news that there were over 15,000 people who had applied to go on these flotillas. So my winners of the week are every single one of those 15,000 people for being willing to put their lives on the line for the health and safety and well-being of the people of Gaza. Thank you so much. If you are one of those people, you are and forever will be a winner in my book. All right.
Yeah, that's really cool. I would say my winner is Canadian tourism, because recently US tourism has been dropping a lot given the current presidential administration. And so, my family's background is working in hospitality and tourism in Canada. And what we're seeing is a big trend of people choosing to travel to Canada instead of the States this summer.
Definitely.
So honestly, it's really great for our economy and great for people who are working in these hospitality sectors, right? So restaurants, hotels, entertainment, things like that. So shout out Canada for not being as bad as the US currently.
Absolutely. Shout out Canada. Keep coming. Anyone who's listening from internationally, we do have some international listeners. I can see you out there by our metrics. So keep coming. We love to have you. And thank you so much for joining us, Ji Won. Where can people find you? Where can people find Reclaim Canada's NDP?
Yeah, so Reclaim, we have a website. It's reclaimcanadasndp.ca. We are also launching our French site soon, which is Reclaim the NDP du Canada.ca. And otherwise, we're available at reclaim.ndp@gmail and reclaim.ndp on all social media platforms. And you can reach us there. And I check our email pretty frequently, so I'll probably be responding to you. If you want to reach me directly, my social media is Ji Won Jung _official across Instagram and TikTok. I might be adding more platforms, but I have a lot of tabs open in my mind lately, so we'll see.
Gotcha. No worries. Absolutely. Thanks for joining us for another week of No Power Panel, our first week without Isaac. Thanks for coming back. I hope to see you come back again. Please, if you like the video, like, comment, subscribe, share, do all that good stuff. Thanks again so much. Have a great day.